Welcome in the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for finding us on your favorite podcast app. You can also find us on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. Download Dash Radio for free. Search for Nothing But Net, and you'll find us there every day at 7 p.m. Also, my new show on OnSideRadio.com. We have all 5 Reasons guests, and that's from 10 a.m. I keep forgetting what it is. 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. Check that out on OnSideRadio.com Monday through Friday. Also, 5reasonsports.com, our no paywall site. Brady Hawk put 3 new articles up there today. I'm losing count, but make sure that you check that out for sure. Also, the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I won a little here last night as well. I'm on a run. I'm not going to say what I'm doing on Prize Picks because I'm not doing quite as well there right now, but I am doing well on mybookie.ag. I hope you guys feasted on the MyBookie Turkey Day free play that allowed users to grab themselves a risk-free bet up to $250. It was basically a free shot at trying to double your money. If you didn't get in on that, what are you doing? No, but seriously, now is the time to get some skin in the game with MyBookie, where odds boosts, lightning deals, and free bets await all season long. And with the NFL playoffs right around the corner, we know who these teams are, we know what they're capable of, and it's not difficult to find some value in the lines. Whether you're a first-time customer, you've been playing MyBookie for years, there's no shortage of value to be found in the thousands of game lines, unique prop bets, and contests that they offer every week. And I really would recommend the live betting. Like if you're watching a game that's not going anywhere, I did this last night. They have the lines up there the entire game, so you can bet it even after the game has started. They also boast a fully fledged casino platform giving you access to all the classic table, slot, and card games you'd expect to find at your local spot, and the doors never close. Make the right play and sign up today at MyBookie, and when you do, use the promo code 5 on the floor. That's 5 on the floor to get your deposit matched halfway all the way up to $1,000. The terms are simple. You put in $200, they'll match you with another $100 in your account. If you're already planning to bet this season, this is free betting money. Again, it's mybookie.ag, code 5 on the floor. And now, today's episode.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily show on the Miami Heat and the NBA featuring Ethan Skolnick with Alex Toledo and Greg Sylvander, part of the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the floor. Here is today's floor plan. Again, check out mybookie.ag, but you can check us out today for the next 20 minutes or so. We got Greg Sylvander, we've got Alex Toledo, we got myself, Ethan Skolnick. Now, ESPN put out this list. We know it's bait. They're trying to get you to sign up for Insider. How many of us actually signed up for Insider? Greg, Alex?
I almost signed up in the process of trying to get this list for you guys for the show.
But you did not. Good. Greg, did you sign up for Insider?
I was signed up in like the Chad Ford days of ESPN Insider, which dates me considerably.
Right. Okay. So look, it's going to be on Twitter. You wait for somebody to post it. I know, look, there's good people at ESPN, but since they're putting everything behind the paywall now, I don't feel badly about it. But basically, ESPN has ranked it down from 100 down to 51. They haven't done the top 50 yet. They've gone from 100 to 51. The one reason I noticed this today is that DeMar DeRozan was not happy, and his ranking is ridiculous. But there were 3 Heat players from 51 to 100. From 51 to 100. Of course, there's probably, I would guess, 2 guys that have not been named yet. We're going to go through this a little bit. Before we get to the Heat players, first we'll say there's nobody between 91 and 100. Seth Curry, Mitchell Robinson, I feel like Knicks fans have him second. He's 92nd. Ricky Rubio, Jared Allen, LaMarcus Aldridge feels low. Marc Gasol,
wow, maybe
feels high. Derek White, down there with San Antonio. I feel like not enough people know enough about him. Otto Porter Jr., Marcus Morris. I mean, certainly the Clippers believed he was better than 99th in the league. And Joe Harris, who also just got a big contract. Then 81 through 90. John Wall, who we haven't seen play in 2 years, but he's now in Houston, ahead of DeMar DeRozan. Wow. DeJounte Murray, right behind his teammate DeRozan. John Collins, Danilo Gallinari.
Way ahead of Aldridge.
Ahead of Aldridge, right. 2 Spurs ahead of Aldridge. Danilo Gallinari, who, of course, took the most money with Atlanta, which we should have figured. Brooke Lopez, Buddy Hield, who may be on the block. Jeremy Grant, no longer with Denver. With Detroit. Joe Ingles of Utah. Patrick Beverley at 90. I think that's high. I don't think he should be on this list. And then before we get to a Heat player, Montrezl Harrell at 76, switched teams to the Lakers. KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, still a Laker. Aaron Gordon with the Magic. Dennis Schroeder, also now a Laker. Josh Richardson at 80, now a Maverick. And then it's 75, a guy who we didn't even know if he was going to be in the rotation last year, Duncan Robinson. Looking over this list, Greg, high or low?
I mean, this is so weird. First off, let's just say that this ESPN list, we need to take it with a grain of salt. I feel like Nekias Duncan should do his top 100, and then the whole league should essentially just work off of that list. That would be my recommendation. But it's just interesting to see Duncan Robinson at 75 when Joe Harris just got a huge contract and does very similar things, maybe not as great of a shooter, and he's at 100. So there's just some inconsistencies that way. What I like about it is that it appears as if the national media and hopefully the rest of the league, and I think probably more the inside the league portion of this is more relevant, values Duncan Robinson for what he brings to the table. To see him in the neighborhood of guys like Aaron Gordon and Miles Turner, who were picks that were obviously huge lottery selections, to him be sandwiched in between those guys is pretty interesting to see. And it just speaks to that what he brings to the table at an elite level is something that the league values at an unprecedented rate.
Yeah, Alex, let's go to you on this. I just want to ask you one thing in context. So let's look at the four guys picked ahead of him, right? Just to give an idea of the space he's in. Mike Conley at 71, who has an enormous contract, although he didn't live up to it the past couple of years. PJ Tucker, who wants an enormous contract. Bojan Bogdanovic. Which Bogdanovic is this?
That's the one on the Jazz.
I always forget. This is the one. That's the one on the Jazz who had a great season and got hurt. And Miles Turner at 74. Do you have a problem with Duncan being behind any of those?
Those guys have been in the league longer and I think have more of a reputation, so maybe that's why they're ahead of him. But if we're nitpicking, I definitely would put Mike Conley behind him after the season he just had. At Miles Turner, I would probably put behind him because of just his general, inconsistency. Where I think with Duncan Robinson, it's a sure thing now. Like, what you're getting with him. Whatever he develops from now and going forward, that's fine. But what you're getting with him, and it's what Leif was talking about, that elite shooting, like where you just have that human torch. I think it's good to see ESPN, giving him some love there. Like, I've never really loved these lists either, but it's good to see him kind of getting the recognition that he's a really high level player. And you can nitpick and put him above a bunch of these guys, to be honest. Like, they put him behind Steven Adams, for example, and Ibaka, and I'm like, those guys are good players. But like, if you're telling a team pick Duncan Robinson or them, even taking away the age thing, I think you're still taking the guy who just turns your offense into an elite one if you know what you're doing with him.
Man,
Yeah, Alex, that's what I want to get to here, because let's look at the guys in the 60s, okay? Because you mentioned Steven Adams, right? And you mentioned Ibaka.
Blake Griffin.
This is a really eclectic list. Blake Griffin. Well, because let's go through it, because when you look at the 10 players between 61 and 70, again, Duncan is 75. It tells you that this thing is all over the place. I don't know exactly what it is they're valuing, right? Because and again, players are different. They bring different skill sets. That's part of this. 61 is Davis Bertans. He's a Duncan Robinson style player. Is he better right now than Duncan Robinson?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what separates them. Like, they play almost the exact same role, take a similar amount of high volume threes, and are both human flamethrowers. Like, I guess if you want to say you like Bertans more than Robinson, I guess it'll be because of his size. But other than that, like, I don't really know what else differentiates them. I would have to really look at the numbers, but I don't think Bertans brings anything on the defensive end either. And I think I would probably rather have Duncan as a defender going forward, just because of the way, he kind of has like a wing body. So maybe in theory he's switchable, or I just think Bertans is never going to really be switchable. Regardless, I don't think this should be apart by like 15 spots or whatever it is.
Well, so let's look at some of the other guys. Okay, so 62 Bogdanovic is a more well-rounded player than Duncan Robinson. Would we agree with that? This is the other Bogdanovic, is the one that didn't sign with Milwaukee ultimately and ended up in Atlanta. He's more well-rounded than Duncan at this stage, right? Okay, fair. 63, TJ Warren, who probably wouldn't be in the top 80, right, before the bubble, right?
This is bubble
Hero.
Right. Well, we're not at Tyler yet. You always give away the ghost. We're getting to Tyler in a second. Okay, not yet. TJ Warren at 63. You could argue the way he played in the bubble, he should be higher. But I do think that the casual NBA fan who looks at this 63 TJ Warren, 64 Kevin Love, 65 Blake Griffin, just based on pedigree. I mean, it's purely injury related, right? Like, I mean, Blake Griffin, if healthy, is a top 30, 35 player still, right?
No, for sure. And I mean, even if you creep down the list even further, D'Angelo Russell at 69, like he just got a max contract. So it's like TJ Warren, the Phoenix Suns had to pay Indiana to take TJ Warren with draft picks. So to see him at 63, I mean, there's definitely some bubble bias going on there, but I think this also, it has to be that the injuries and kind of maybe the age and wear and tear is what they're factoring in here a bit.
Okay. All right. So let's get to the next part. You gave it away a little bit, but at 60 is Robert Covington, who's a very good player. He's not a lead player, but he's one of the better 3-and-D players in the league. But then 58 and 59, Goran Dragic and Tyler Herro. And I find this fascinating because there's no case in my mind that could be made against Goran Dragic being in the top 60. No case. He was an elite scorer in the postseason on a team that made the finals, right? He's a top 60 player?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. You can make a case about Tyler Herro, though. This is why I'm a little confused. I mean, just purely on pedigree in the league, having Tyler Herro at 59 and D'Angelo Russell, who, as Leif mentioned, has made an all-star, has a max contract and made an all-star team, 10 spots below Tyler Herro?
Yeah. Well,
I feel like that's a little bit of hype. As much as we all love Tyler, I feel like that's hype.
And Ethan, this goes back to something that you've been saying literally for now more than a year. And that is that players around the Heat specifically, like, remember when we talked about how the rookie hazing didn't necessarily happen to Tyler in the same way because it almost felt like all the vets immediately could identify that he belonged and he was like a guy who was going to be a stud. It almost feels like there's some of that that's going on here, that ultimately, like, everybody just knows that the trajectory of Tyler Herro is one that is going to be, you know, a big time ascension. But also, like, we have to acknowledge that there's bubble bias going on, and the snarl and the finals and just the 37-point Eastern Conference Finals game. Like, some of that stuff is in play here.
Honestly, like, there's these rankings are all over the place, man. Like, the more I look at it, the more I feel ridiculous talking about it. Just like,
but how do you even do it? Alex, that's my question, though. I mean, I don't.
It's hard. It's hard. I
want to cut them a little slack. Like when we did this for the all-time players, and it was hard. I don't know why this feels harder because you're comparing in the same era, but it does because the players are also different.
The thing that I think, it seems like they're projecting. So I don't have the article in front of me, so it would be nice, you know, to actually confirm this. But what it seems like is they're projecting for this season, because that's the only way to explain these rankings. I think I've been trying to look at it, like trying to find the pattern, and that's the only thing that makes sense. Because, like, there's a lot of young guys who are ahead of people with higher pedigree, like you're mentioning, including Herro. Like, just for example, right, Lonzo Ball, Christian Wood, 54 and 55, and they're ahead of a lot of guys who people would consider better than them. Like, I could name, you know,
Michael Porter Jr. at 51.
Yeah.
I mean, would I doubt that Michael Porter Jr. becomes a top 51 player?
He's not ahead of Aiden, and they have him ahead of Aiden right there too.
Right, he's ahead. Right,
ahead of Nurkic. He should no way.
Right, but I mean, Michael Porter Jr. could get there, but he's nowhere near. He was unplayable at the end of games.
This has to be a projection for how their impact in this upcoming season. I think that may be how we have to look at it, because it has to be just about that. I think.
Agreed. I think there's some potential involved, but the overarching thing that jumps off the page for me is that when you see Michael Porter Jr. at 51 and you see Tyler Herro at 59, when you're talking about kind of the blue chip young prospects around the league that people are looking at and saying, like, wow, those are the next wave of guys, the Heat have a guy that's included in that list. And that's, you know, never mind Duncan Robinson at 75. So, I mean, it's encouraging from that standpoint, even if we're not going to validate this list too strongly, to see that, you know, you got a guy in the conversation there.
Well, and you don't have a lot of guys picked where Herro was, the young guys, right? I mean, Ayton was picked first, right? So, I mean, you're talking about guys that were picked higher than them. I mean, look, it's hard for me to even make a case to put Herro ahead of Anunoby at this point. I mean, maybe on potential, but from what we saw last year, and he's 9 spots ahead of Anunoby. And again, the big one that gets me is the Tyler Herro, D'Angelo Russell one. I mean, we may hate D'Angelo Russell's defense, But if Tyler Herro gave you the kind of season that D'Angelo Russell had 2 years ago, this year,
Oh my God,
you would absolutely right. You would
Ethan,
absolutely.
you would be on
take
here
that.
talking about that Hero is on a better path than Wade and
Right.
So would I.
Right. Right.
No, but you know
Right.
what? Like this is a situation where I think that they have to just be projecting out that Hero is going to take a leap. I mean, you guys know that I joke around about the Steph leap that I think Tyler Hero can take, but
that was a joke.
yeah, well, maybe, you know, with me, I'm hope trafficking it at every chance, but so there has to be just a little bit of that being factored in here.
Yeah, no doubt. All right.
Wait,
so
one more thing.
yeah, go
You didn't mention that the Heat traded, essentially, according to this list, the 80th best player in the world for wherever they have Jimmy Butler, which I assume is going to be in the top 15.
I would guess he'd be in the top 15. They also traded, though, Bogdanovich, right, who's the 73rd best player in the world, remember, way back when. So they had him on the roster, too. I mean, there is no other Heat connection that I could find. It's just – but I think when we see the top 50, we'll think maybe Goran should have been higher. I think that's the only one. Because here's some names I haven't seen yet. Lou Williams.
Oh, my God.
And I think Goran is better than Lou Williams at this stage.
Malcolm Brogdon.
Malcolm Brogdon.
Who will better not be in the top 50?
He's going to be.
You think so?
I think so.
I think he's worse than Joe Harris.
I bet you he's like
number
100 to 50.
I would rather have Joe Harris right now than Lou Will, and he's number 100.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, I would be surprised. I think we should come back and when we do 1 through 50, we'll take a look at it because obviously there's going to be 2 Heat players on there. All right. Before we get to the next part, I want to touch on something Udonis said today here after a word from Safe Cubbies. Before we do that, though, prediction, not projection, prediction. Where do you think Jimmy will be? Each of you, where do you think Bam will be? Because they're the 2 left.
I've got Jimmy at 11 and Bam at 14.
If I had to guess, I'm going to put Jimmy at 9 and Bam, I'm going to say 17.
If you're projecting, if this is a projection list that they're doing, Bam might be higher than 17. But I think I'm going to guess 10 and 15. I'm going to guess I'm kind of splitting the difference between the two of you guys. So if that's the case, then the Heat would have 2 top 15 players and 5 top 75 players. There are only 30 teams in the NBA, right? So of the top 75, every team should have 2.5 players. The Heat are going to have 5. It tells you kind of that for all the talk of disrespect for this Heat team, 5 players in the top 75, and then you're not even getting into some of the role guys that are there and obviously some of the projection guys that the Heat have. It's pretty good. I'd be curious to see. There's a lot of Lakers on this list, including some new ones like Herro and Schroeder. But I will be curious to see. I bet you the Lakers probably have, 6 maybe? But the Heat having 5 players is significant in the top 75. All right, a word from Safe Cubbies, and we're going to get into something that Udonis Haslem said today. We'll get back to our episode here in a second. But first, I want to tell you about one of our most important sponsors. We've talked about them a lot, but now they've got new offerings. And as you know, COVID-19 is not gone. So you've got to make your environment, whether it's your school, you want to tell your administrator, whether it might be your business, maybe you are the boss, maybe you want to tell the boss, or whether it's a residence, you want to make the place safe. So you got to check out safecubbies.com. They've got custom sneeze guards and shields, and also they stock sneeze guards and shields. They do office partitions. Again, they work with restaurants, businesses, schools, and more. They do floor decals for the social distancing. They do the PPE and COVID signage. They also can put in the touch-free sanitizer stands with or without the branding, and they do branded face masks as well. And Safe Cubbies will come out and perform a site survey to provide a free estimate for you. And of course, they will do the installation. So reach out to them, mention 5 reasons. We've had many, many people who followed us. They've gone to them. They've been very, very satisfied. So check out safecubbies.com for all of your safety needs during the pandemic. All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the floor. I got Greg Sylvander and I have Alex Toledo. Again, check out safecubbies.com. Also check out mybookie.ag. Use the code 5 on the floor. Also, if you go to Manscaped, make sure you use the code 5RSN. More about them in the next episode. All right. Udonis Haslem said something today. Well, he said a lot of things. He talked about the whole disrespect stuff. I love when UD speaks. Obviously we want to get him back on the podcast. He's been on with us 3 times. I want to get him back on again. But he also said, and this has been coming from a lot of people, including Bam Adebayo, that Precious Achiuwa is more developed at this stage, more skilled at this stage than Bam was. No ceiling Bam. John Calipari, Kentucky Bam. How should we feel about this, Craig?
I don't really know how to process that other than, I mean, if you thought that I hope trafficked previously, just wait until the season starts. If he flashes anything like Bam did, because even Bam early on, there were little moments. I think I remember, I'll probably get called out for this, but back in summer league, I think I saw Bam go coast to coast a couple times, like literally grab it off the board and just go with it. And it's like, you saw these little flashes where you were like, whoa, okay, I see what the vision is here. And there were other moments, obviously, as the season progressed and he didn't have a lot of opportunities. If we see those same flashes out of him, and when you see Udonis saying like he's a little bit further along than Bam was, it's just, the Heat are targeting guys that are mature, that are as close to as ready as you can be for a rookie. So, I mean, it's a situation where I think Heat Nation would be over the moon if he is anywhere near what Bam Adebayo obviously has become, but on a smaller scale, just more recently speaking, if he can do what Bam Adebayo did as a rookie, if you just replicate that is a huge contribution to this rotation for the next season.
I'll ask you this, Alex. Is there any concern? Because Udonis is one of the three, Heat, all-time bigs, along with Chris Bosh and Alonzo Mourning, that anointed Bam the next one, right? And they were right. Okay, when we had all the idiots screaming about Whiteside and Spo should be playing Whiteside, playing him down the stretch, pump the ball down into the post, okay, and let Hassan dribble it off his knee. Those three guys were pushing Bam unapologetically with Hassan on the roster. Is there any concern that if this continues, okay, where Bam's pushing Precious, where Udonis is pushing Precious, where Jimmy at some point starts to do it, where Tyler's done it, I think Spo will hold the expectations back. But if that starts to happen, is there any concern about Heat fans who may have to wait to see him getting frustrated? They're already frustrated they don't see KZ, and we don't hear quite the same things about KZ.
Yeah, and that's kind of what was going through my head as you guys were talking about it. And I'm like, wow, I mean, we've heard multiple guys, like you just said, kind of hype up Precious already. And we obviously know that the fans want to see KZ. There's been plenty of hype behind him, maybe not to the same degree from the organization. I don't recall them being as high on KZ, at least publicly, as they, I think, have shown so far with Precious. But you're right. Like, I think there is going to be a set of expectations there. Like, and I'm kind of going to have some too. But like I mentioned in other pods, I think it's going to be a weird season. There's going to be probably guys that don't play some games. And I think the time that they do get to play, there's going to be pressure on them, man. There's going to be pressure on them to perform. And then Heat Twitter is going to overreact if they don't do well. And I'm not looking forward to that part, but there should be expectations for them, because at this point, if you got multiple people inside the organization saying it, I think it's for a reason. I think they're putting pressure on the player because they believe in the player.
Yeah, and now there's two, right? And I wonder, again, if KZ and Precious are both not playing, this is why on the Harkless pod I brought up, is Harkless going to be a guy who kind of becomes, the Trojan horse for other guys, whether it's Precious or KZ, and he's getting that playing time, even if he's a different style player, and Heat fans start to get frustrated because, as Nikias talked about on the pod, Mo goes through one of those stretches where he's not shooting the three particularly well. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, I feel like they've been unleashed to praise young players because Tyler and Bam rewarded their confidence, right? So now it's like there's an expectation with young Heat players that A, they're going to play, and B, they're going to play well. And for about 20 years with the Heat, that was not the expectation.
Yeah,
okay?
the Khalid Reeves era is no more.
Right. No, exactly. Right. The Khalid Reeves era. God, let's go to the Charles Smith era, the Tim James era, the Wayne Simeon era.
What are you guys talking about?
Yeah, exactly. We don't even want to talk about that. All right. Check out our two sponsors, mybookie.ag. Again, use the code 5 on the floor. Make sure you take advantage of all of those specials, and also safecubbies.com. Make sure that you check that out. We're still living in the COVID age. I know people have forgotten, but I know our guy Alex is driving a Lyft. He sees it. So it's going to get worse before it gets better, for sure, especially as we head into New Year's Eve. So tell your school about it. If the kids are back in school, And obviously, if you have a business or you're close with a business owner, make sure that business owner knows about safecubbies.com, because everybody should be safe at work and at school. We'll be back tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Regional Sports Network.